Welcome to Lead Today with me, Kalina. Let's talk leadership. Hello and welcome back. Today we are talking type 2 in the Enneagram. If you haven't heard of it yet, the Enneagram is a personality assessment that really helps you get to know yourself on a level that I think other assessments miss. There are levels of ego development in the Enneagram that support you to develop into really the most resourceful version of yourself and sort of the best case scenario for your innate nature. So we all have these tendencies that we grow up with, and some of us try to stifle them. Some of us try to act like we don't have them. Some of us just don't even think about our tendencies consciously and just think we are who we are. But if you're in the market for a coach and wanting to learn and grow, I would say the Enneagram is a great way for you to get really a deep sense of where your blind spots might be and how you can approach a self-development journey. It delves into the shadows, so the parts of ourselves that we think are unacceptable or ugly, bad, quote unquote. And I would say that this is the first assessment that I can genuinely recommend, which says a lot because I'm quite skeptical. You get this typing and then what are you supposed to do about it? Really, right? It's like, okay, you read your report of your personality assessment. It says you're a great listener and you're bad at delegating or whatever it says. And then you kind of put it on a shelf and never look at it again. And that's just not what I want for a tool that I work with clients utilizing. So this tool is the first one that I really feel good about using with clients as a preamble. It gives me a cheat sheet to work with them. And whether you work with me or not, I really think it's worth your while to both know your type and then really understand how it can be a roadmap for your personal development. So today we head into the type 2. If you don't know your type, I highly recommend you take my free assessment. Yes, it will ask for your email. There are paid reports. Those are optional. So do what you think is best. Paid reports are great because you get more details and I've formulated them to be highly personalized, but up to you and your needs for what it is that you're looking to do. So take the free assessment and get your type at the very least so you can know if this episode is relevant for you. Okay, so type 2. Type 2 is the helper. It's that person that comes to your mind that's just super nurturing and supportive. They absolutely excel in roles where they're caregivers for others. Nurse, they might be a doctor, although doctors can be a bit more egotistical and so they're not always a 2, but nurses oftentimes come in as a 2 because they don't get the spotlight. A doctor might be more like a 3 because they want to look good. This is where, for me, when you're kind of trying to type people in the Enneagram, if that's something you try to do, because the Enneagram is useful, yes, for yourself, but also it's good to know who you're dealing with, right? And understand their motivations and who they are so you can better interact with others. But you have to be careful about typing people in the Enneagram because the same person, and we talked about this in the previous episode about type 1s, every single profession or every single person could in theory be any type. It really, like someone's stature or the way they are in life, it's not going to give it away. To me, what gives away the Enneagram type is more someone's motivation, why they do what they do. When you listen to them talk, when you see how they operate in the world, how they respond to different situations, that's what's going to let you know. So a number 2, type 2 and a type 1 could be in the same scenario. It's how they're going to respond to it. It's the nuances in even word choice and demeanor when, let's say, something goes astray or someone asks for help. The way that they're going to answer is what's going to tip you off. They might both say yes to helping that person that's asking for help, but the why, what will motivate them to help, will be very different. A type 2 is a caregiver because they have a deep desire to be loved and appreciated. And you could say, doesn't everyone? I mean, yeah, everyone does have a desire to be loved and appreciated, but is that their core motivator? Some people their core motivation is more to be recognized, to be important. Some it's to be seen and heard. There are different motivations that are people's core motivations. Interesting about the Enneagram is, of course, you can have a subtype, you can have wings. So you could be a type 1 wing 2, you could be a type 3 wing 2. You can be interacting with a type 2 persona without being a type 2. So just know, all of us, for example, motivations for a type 2 all of us can seek validation and affirmation and do kind things because we want to be validated. That's not only a type 2 behavior that could only be by this one particular type. That's something that the type 2 is doing more often than not. You're seeing them look for affirmation through acts of kindness and generosity. It's somebody that you can go to and they're ready to help. And that's how they'll be perceived across the board because they're always offering help to everyone, They really find their fulfillment in being needed and appreciated. So if this is a woman, then they will really have strong nurturing qualities. If it's a man, they'll probably be in a profession or in a role where they really are the helper. Like people come to them. They might be a manager. They might be someone that owns the business where they really like that people are calling on them and they have to be the one person and the only person that can solve it. It's this need to be needed question for the type 2. Also, we're looking at, fears of the type 2. Again, I want you to really sort of try to think of someone that you know in your life, kind of think of a persona, because when I say some of these things, even reading it, it's like, wait, couldn't everybody have this? So some of the core fears of a type 2 are fearing rejection and abandonment. Fear is being seen as selfish or needy, striving to avoid any perception of inadequacy or dependency, suppressing their own needs and emotions out of fear that expressing them will push others away. So all these things, right? It's like, okay, have you ever suppressed your own needs and emotions out of fear that you'll push someone else away? Sure, right? We're all moderating our behavior to make sure that we fit in. We all have a deep sense of a need for belonging. It's very human, but the type 2 is doing that because if they push others away, then they're not needed. If they're rejected and abandoned, then they're unloved. Type 2 is to be loved and needed. Whereas a type 1, their fear, it's not necessarily about being needed. They have to be right. They have to be morally just. So if they're pushing people away, that's not a problem as much as a 2 because they're worried about enforcing the rules. You see what I mean? So it's kind of like if a type 1 got dumped and was rejected, would they be sad? Sure. Sure. But it's not hitting the core of their fears. What would hit the core of their fears would be something like if they got cheated on. They would be frustrated because that person broke the way they would talk about that breakup would be that person broke the terms of the engagement. They broke the contract that was set. We were dating, they betrayed me, they didn't follow what they're supposed to do because we were in a committed relationship. They'd really go on and on about how this person didn't follow the rules or were morally unjust. Whereas a type 2 would feel abandoned and rejected and, oh my God, what did I do to deserve this? They don't love me anymore. I tried to give them everything I could, right? So the dialogue is going to be very different. So again, notice this for if you're a 2, but also just if you have 2s around you, really. And the suppression of the needs and emotions are so that they don't lose the love. Whereas a type 3, for example, would suppress their own needs and emotions because they want to achieve in the situation. They want to be seen as competent. They want to be seen as good enough. They want to be seen as doing the right thing in the situation. And so if their needs and emotions are not useful in the situation, throw them out the window. For them, it's everything that's useful. So we can see just in juxtaposing the 2 against the 1 and the 3, which are close by, right? The wings. So a 2 could have a wing 3 or a wing 1. You'll see kind of how it's differing. Now, this is why the assessment is so useful, because you could have some wing tendencies, and we want to understand those nuances because you're not, and no one is just a type 2, right? We all have nuances to our behaviors, and so we do want to understand those subtle undertones. Maybe you have more of a motivation of a 2 wing 3. Maybe you have more of that slant of helping others, but you've got that moralistic side to you. So we want to understand the nuances, and that's why an assessment like the one that I've developed is useful, is to understand your own unique tendencies and the nuances, because this is a broad bucket we're framing here. So the way that the type 2 will navigate the world is really, they're just great gift givers. They're somebody that can anticipate the needs of others, so they'll provide support, gifts before it's even requested. As we've said, they're great in caregiving roles, teacher, nurse, anything that requires you to understand the needs of other people. And they really do go above and beyond to ensure the well-being of those around them. You can see where that could become problematic, but the type 2s create such deep and meaningful connections with others through genuine warmth and generosity. This is when the 2 is doing well. So where this can go wrong is when they're going above and beyond for everyone else and ensuring the well-being of everyone else around them, but they are forgotten, right? Because if I take time for me, it takes away from me helping others, then they might not love me, and then that's the worst case scenario for a type 2, is to be unloved, is to be not appreciated. It's somebody that gives you a gift and then kind of looks to see your reaction because they really want you to love it. They really want you to appreciate it. That's what gives them meaning. And so their deep and meaningful connections with others, when they're evolved, when they're in those higher levels of development, that's genuine. When a type 2 is being manipulative, they're giving in order to control, in order to get that validation, in order to almost elevate themselves because they want to be needed. And so if they're above you in that way, like if they're the gatekeeper and they control, it's like a manager employee. It can be in the workplace for sure, where like they want to gatekeep, and so they're so helpful, but then you become dependent. They want dependence. So this could be someone that doesn't let their kids grow up, doesn't really let their kids have the independence or the responsibility, doesn't foster that independence because they want to nurture, but they're holding their kids back. So if you see, parent-child relationships where there's no opinion of the child, there's no autonomy, there's no life that the child has been able to build, oftentimes it can be that it can be a bunch of different types, right? Any parent could be a smothering parent, doesn't matter what type you are, but if a type 2 is a smothering parent, it's because they want to continue to be needed. They want someone to depend on them, and what better way than to keep their kid dependent on them? So that's just because that's one caregiver role, right? So again, like here's another example where you could be a smothering parent as a type 1 through 9. Doesn't matter what type you are. The why behind why you'd be smothering would be completely different. So like type 1 would be a smothering parent because they need to make sure that their kid follows the rules, their kid stays in line. Type 3 is smothering because they want to make sure the whole family's image is good because that falls back on their image. Type 2 is smothering and controlling because they want to keep that dependency to keep them feeling needed, which makes them feel loved. If the kids don't appreciate their efforts, they're throwing it back in their face. I mean, it can go downhill really quickly if they're not giving for the right reasons. That genuine warmth and generosity, if that's not where it's coming from and you're a type 2, check yourself because you're going down a dangerous road. Okay, growth areas for your type. Definitely setting boundaries. And again, I just want to, every single time I say something, I can just even hear myself. If I was listening to this podcast, I'd be so skeptical. It's like, setting boundaries. Is this not the biggest thing we're hearing across the board at work and beyond? Like set boundaries, work-life balance. These words really bother me. Not because they don't have merit, but because what does it mean to set healthy boundaries and prioritize your own needs without feeling guilty? Like that's what a type 2 would benefit from. How? How? When you have these demands that make you kind of feel like you've got a cave, it can feel very difficult to assert yourself in that moment. So how to be more assertive, how to set those boundaries? Well, one, for a 2 especially, if they actually set a boundary by committing to someone else. So that's going to be really great for type 2 because if, for example, you commit to a workout class with a friend or going to a massage or going to physio or talking to a coach, that's something where you're doing it for yourself. You are setting a boundary because you're going to have that time dedicated for you, but you're actually committing to some other person, like the massage therapist or the coach or the doctor or the therapist or whoever it is. And so you're going to feel more obliged to show up. So that's the kind of boundary setting that really works for a type 2. It works for a lot of people, but a type 2 in particular because they have made that external commitment to another person and they're not going to want to let the coach down, Another growth area, self-reflection. Again, this is good for everyone, but why should the 2 self-reflect? Because the 2 needs to explore their own motivations. Again, this is probably good for all types, but the 2 in particular, explore your motivations in the sense of, where am I giving? Because the 2 is helper, the 2 is such a giver. So all of these, so setting boundaries, self-reflection, and embracing self-care, those 3 they're so generic, they're for everyone. The nuance, the gold is in how, truly. So setting boundaries, well, the type 2 can set boundaries by committing to another person, something that is going to benefit themselves as well. Self-reflection, type 2 should reflect on their own motivations when it comes to where they're expending energy, where they're giving. That's a great starting point for self-reflection of a type 2. Where do I give energy? Who do I help on a day-to-day basis? Are there people that I help where I feel resentment, where I don't feel appreciated, where I feel like I'm not giving from a place of genuine generosity? Okay, these need to be explored, right? Why am I giving? What am I expecting from them? What's my motivation for giving, if not that genuine generosity? There, now we're hitting the nail on the head when it comes to some self-reflection that's meaningful for the type 2. Embracing self-care. Well, type 2 does so well in caring for others that this is kind of a no-brainer. We need to recognize that we as a type 2 ourselves deserve the same love and attention that we give to others. Okay? I mean, I'm not a type 2, but just it's like, as a type 2, you need to recognize that deserving, as much as you want to feel loved and you want to feel validated, the best source of that can never be taken away is you and you, you know? And so if you grew up in a conditional loving household, which, you know, kind of who didn't, and if you didn't, society is certainly conditionally loving, because society will lift you up and spit you out in the same day, you know, depending on your behaviors. So if you grew up in this world, there's going to be some level of contingent acceptance or love or appreciation. And if that's the case for you, if you resonate with that, then really bolstering that cycle of, okay, I'm really good at giving to other people. How about I try to direct a little bit of that toward me so that I have a source that I can depend on that's not sort of dependent on a third party, you know, that's outside of myself. So that's something that I would say on the self-care front, is that attention that you give others, that love, however you, so this is where maybe the love languages come in, which is generally speaking something that couples would work on. But you've got Gary Chapman's 5 love languages, which are acts of service, physical touch, quality time, physical affection, words of affirmation. Which ones resonate with you? How do you give some of those to yourself? Okay, the Hornevian triad. So within that, the type 2 falls within the compliant triad. That's a focus on meeting the needs of others, which we heard about already. The big thing here with the compliant type is struggling with self-worth if you feel unappreciative or unloved. And this self-worth is something that's kind of been thrown around a lot right now. Self-esteem, self-worth. I think the best way to go about this that I've found that works for people is, again, going to the source of, what can I give me? Being compliant means not wanting to rock the boat, means not through seeking approval, not really standing up for yourself potentially. And so as a compliant type, you might want to reflect on, where is it that I'm just complying to get by, to not rock the boat? Where am I just saying, yeah, it's okay, when it really isn't? That's something that's an exercise I would really want a type 2 to do, because you're going to see where you're kind of not just self-sacrificing, but kind of going against your core values. And type 2 will regularly go against their core values because their needs and emotions don't matter. So why would their values, just to continue to be in a position to be needed, loved, and to be able to be that helper. So look at where you're being compliant in your life and how you might tune back into your values so that you can help people from that genuine place. For the type 2, it's not bad that you're a giver. It's not bad that you want to help people. It's, again, the motivation. Are you helping because you're trying to be manipulative into people maybe being dependent on you, or are you helping because you want to? So is it resentful and manipulative, or is it because you want to? Because it's genuinely generous, warm, compassionate. So the why is so important here. And finally, we have the heart center for type 2 in terms of center of intelligence, which, I mean, makes complete sense, right? Of course, you're a heart center as a type 2. It just makes complete sense. You're kind of pulled by your heartstrings, and that's how you make decisions. And so you prioritize relationships and empathy in your interactions. And so somebody calls you, and even though they've done you wrong, you give them 1,001 chances. The type 2s that I know, they're just the most generous people. Again, are they doing it because they want to be liked and because they like to be needed? Or are they doing it out of genuine compassion and care for the other person? That is the question. But the most generous people I've ever met are type 2s, and just so, like, you call them and they are going to send help, and they are just there, so willing to pick up the pieces of any mess, any challenge you're facing. And so, of course, they're pulled by their heartstrings. They make decisions because they see someone in need and they respond to that. So absolutely, being characterized by emotional awareness and interpersonal connections, we want to tap into that. And so tap into those feelings of your heart, what you believe really you need is going to be led by your heart. And you're going to know in your heart space, you're going to know if you're going astray or not. You're going to know if you're ignoring your needs or yourself. You're going to know, it's going to be a feeling in your heart, because that's how you're led. So check into that. If things feel off, that's going to be a source of great support for you. So if you loved this, it means a lot to me when you like, review, subscribe, interact with this content. It helps it get to more people. And if you don't know your type yet or want to try out my assessment, please do click on the link in the show notes to get your Enneagram type for free right away. It takes about 5 minutes or so to fill out all the questions, and then there you go. So thanks for listening in. As always, your time and attention means so much to me. It's the main reason I speak into this microphone and come back week over week, so that we can share, learn, and grow together. So thank you for being here. Please do check out the free assessment, and I'll see you in the next episode where we'll talk about type 3, the achiever. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to this episode today. It really helps the show when you like, review, subscribe, or donate to support the effort to continue producing amazing episodes just like this one. I look forward to seeing you again in another episode very soon, and take good care until then.